Ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting shortly, requesting you to take your seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting shortly, requesting you to take your seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, hope you've enjoyed your meal. The first edition of Bangladesh Circular Economy Summit is organized by Bangladesh Apparel Exchange in collaboration with Lotus Foundation and in partnership with P4G. Congratulations to all of you present here today as you've become a part of our initiative to promote the circularity agenda. Thanks to Lotus Foundation, thanks to P4G, and thanks to Deutsche Gesellschaft für International Zusammenarbeit GIZ, GmbH, Embassy of the Netherlands in Bangladesh, and H&M Group. Your valued support has made this initiative possible. Valued participants, I'd like to remind you that free Wi-Fi facilities are available in this event. You can use free Wi-Fi using username BCES and password BCES@2023. You can also scan your QR code and take a look at the website and see what's in the agenda for the whole day today. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have a presentation, Blueprint for a Circular and Sustainable Future. This segment will be conducted by Mr. Buddhi Paranamana, Director Sustainability and Innovation of PDS Limited. Duration of this presentation will be 10 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Buddhi Paranamana for his presentation.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Buddhi Paranamana, and I think I've been tasked with a very hard job speaking right after that magnificent lunch and trying to get everyone's attention. So we'll try, we'll give it a shot, yeah? All right, great, thanks. So as the name states, I'd like to kind of dive into why I selected this particular topic, first of all, and why I want to call it a blueprint for a sustainable, circular and sustainable future, right? So want to kind of dive a little bit into what I mean by a blueprint. So the reason I chose the word blueprint is because it is something that you can build on and you can also replicate. So if you have a steady blueprint, you can build a structure on top of it. You can build something beyond it, right? So there's a lot of conversation today throughout the morning session about action, right? There's a lot of conversation about what is the action that we are taking today to create circularity, to improve sustainability. And this is kind of what I want to drive into because I represent a company that is part of the challenge. We are a sourcing and manufacturing company. So how do we take this challenge and create opportunity from it? So this is what I want to touch on. So I want to focus on three key facets. One is circular economy and what it means to us as a design, sourcing, and manufacturing company. And then I need to touch on a little bit of context about the company that I represent, which is PDS Limited. And then finally, how does this become the entire sustainable ecosystem by using what we have created as what I would like to refer to as the blueprint, right? So let's dive into it. In terms of circular economy for us, as I mentioned, we are a design, sourcing, and manufacturing company. So I kind of wanted to visually depict what circularity means to a company as ourselves, as well as a lot of representatives here who are from the apparel manufacturing and design and sourcing industry. So this is what I believe we can visually represent in this whole circularity of a product. So starting from your raw materials to your design, to obviously your production and manufacturing, distribution, consumption, and finally the 3 R's that was mentioning a lot, but a little variation of that, repair, reuse, and resell, then reducing waste, of course, and recycling. And the cycle continues, right? So this is the entire form of circularity, as I said, how we believe it can be represented within our industry. Now, the reason this, we'll come back to this at the end of the session, so I will kind of show why I'm talking about this at the beginning and how this will kind of represent towards the end and how we have mapped according to this circular function of apparel manufacturing. A little context about the company before I go into the how is required because to put it into context of who we are. So all these companies are within the ecosystem of PDS Limited. The reason I show this is not to really focus on each individual company, but to show that we are a large organization, which means the larger the organization, the larger the challenge that we create, right? So that is the context I want to provide. So we are, at the moment, producing over 1 million garments, and overall, we have about a $2 billion top line. Again, why am I talking about this? Is to provide context. So what are we doing with this revenue, and what are we doing with this challenge, and how are we creating an opportunity out of it? What we've identified is that while we are a large entity and we have a large footprint in the industry, we also need to start looking at how we turn that around and bring it back into the circular economy, as well as provide solutions in the circularity space. So what we've created is a ventures company that has a $50 million fund, and we are focused on investing in sustainable supply chain startups and companies who provide various solutions in sustainability, recycling, repurposing, material innovation, and things of that nature. So out of this $50 million fund, we've at the moment invested over $19.8 million in 63 startups in various spaces, in fashion tech, retail tech, consumer tech, sustainability, and digital-first consumer tech. Again, like I said, providing the context. So we identify that there is something that we need to address and solve here. And what we are creating here in terms of the blueprint that I mentioned is how do we go towards doing that? And the how is looking at investing back into solutions that we can provide into that space. So some of these companies you might have heard of, some of them might be new words for you guys, but the idea is really to kind of map out how we provide that solution in the circularity space. The entire idea is the business case. Again, in the morning session, many times it was mentioned. How do you create a business case out of circularity? How do you scale it? How do you create the need so that it is not just nice to have or not just something that is being done for the requirement of it being done? So this is that business case that we've built. We believe that investment into this space is something that will give us a return from a business perspective while successfully achieving our sustainability and circularity objectives. So as I mentioned, the three areas, right? The main three areas that we discussed on. What do we see as circular economy in the apparel, sourcing, design, and manufacturing space? What is the investment, or what is the action that we have taken today, and we provide that solution? How do we provide that solution? And finally, coming on to the sustainable ecosystem. The key that I want to kind of focus on in the blueprint that I mentioned is the word that has been mentioned right throughout the sessions in the morning: collaboration, right? There are various methods of collaboration, of course, collaboration, but how do you identify the right areas to collaborate in? Regardless of what those specific areas and the how, we have found a way to collaborate by way of investment. Your way of collaborating might be different. However, the key is collaboration. This is genuinely by the baseline blueprint that we are referring to. So by way of collaboration, coming back to the slide that I showed earlier, how do we now take these investments, these collaborations, and plug it into this entire ecosystem? This is that sustainable solution or sustainable ecosystem that I referred to earlier. So we have created, or we have identified opportunity and solutions that goes in areas of the entire supply chain of digital wardrobes. In production, this is a common to bodies that provide you details such as HIG and LEED. LEED was mentioned in one of the presentations earlier. An interesting fact that I came across while looking into the LEED certified buildings, Bangladesh has one of the highest LEED certified factories, number of factories in the world. 187 to be exact, and 183 of that are apparel. How do we create a business case out of that? This is what we want to try to identify, and this is what we want to try to create, right? I think everyone should be discussing that collaboratively on if Bangladesh has that offer against far against everyone else. In comparison, I believe the other countries are at like double-digit numbers. So how do you create that business opportunity? By putting it into this entire supply chain of circular supply chain. Additionally, from production, then we move into consumption and conscious buying. So we have companies such as Good For You, Compare Ethics, and Common Objectives. These are platforms that provide data on your supply chain, your manufacturers, that you can go and evaluate them before making decisions on purchasing or supply chain. We also have in repair, reuse, and resell, companies such as Yellow Octopus, Reflaunt, By Rotation, and Style Theory. These are all, again, interesting companies that are doing either repurposing, repurchasing, or reselling of products. This was also mentioned in one of the presentations earlier about setting up fashion retail reselling points. You see this happening in the UK supply chain, UK retail market, as well as US retail markets as well. So again, providing that input for it. And in terms of recycling, we also focus on upcycling. So Upcycle Labs is an interesting case study that I'll touch upon in the next slide. And then finally, feeding it back into the loop of raw materials by way of material innovations. So this is how we want to see the entire circularity loop being closed. I mentioned quite a lot of companies, I realize, but I want to take you through maybe 2 or 3 case studies in terms of how we are seeing this solution being applied today. Because the entire objective of what we are trying to achieve is how do we solve the problem at hand today. And some examples of that is what I would like to share. So the company I mentioned as Positive Materials, in collaboration with a second company that we have as Matera, is focused on regenerative cotton, but now we have, as you know, regenerative cotton is what is being discussed at the moment in terms of being environmentally friendly and the next stage of the evolution of cotton. But we are looking at regenerative cotton recycling, because this will be the next problem to solve. And this has been, the concept has been proven, and we have done extensive work on this, and we'd like to see this scale up. Avenue is another instance of using recycled cotton instead of your standard virgin cellulose or plastic-based materials. So again, instead of tapping into tree bark that gives you virgin cellulose, we are looking at how can we use waste in recycled cotton base and repurposing that into Lysol fabric. Finally, on upcycling, as I mentioned, a very interesting project that we have is on Upcycle Labs. This is currently located in Nottingham, UK. And what this does is this has a very interesting USP of recycling any type of apparel waste as well as additional other waste such as glass, such as leather, and pretty much a lot of materials get covered under this, and we are looking at a zero waste technology, in sense we can repurpose all of that into different type of materials that can be molded. So if there's some opportunity for molded type product, we can repurpose all of those type of materials that I mentioned here into things like bricks, fittings, furniture parts, and home accessories. So these are some examples I just picked out that are happening most recently out of the entire portfolio of investments that we've done into. Why is this important? Because I want to show that there is solutions that are available today, right? We are talking about what can we do, what can be done. We would like to emphasize on there are things happening today, and how do we become part of this, and how do we then collaborate, right? That was the last thought I want to leave with you. Collaboration is the blueprint, in my opinion, that we want to focus on when it comes to circularity. And as a contributor towards the apparel industry, as a manufacturer, as a design and sourcing company, we have taken a step, we have created that blueprint, and I invite everyone to join us in that blueprint, as well as take that blueprint to your organizations and then the entire supply chain as a whole, and replicate it, and hopefully we can work together towards creating an overall circular economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving to our second part of this event, Bangladesh Circular Apparel and Textile Forum. This part will focus on the apparel and textile industry, zooming on how circularity principles are being adopted in the RMG industry. This day will explore emerging and scaled up circular solutions and industry best practices and share lessons for the apparel industry from other industries. It will delve into how a manufacturer can best accelerate circularity and what is needed for different stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to move to our third keynote of today's event, Circular Business Models and Design for Apparel Industry in Bangladesh, presented by Ms. Stephanie Schutemacher, Head of Communication and member of Holland Circular Hotspot. The keynote will be for 10 minutes. With a round of applause, please welcome Ms. Stephanie Schutemacher.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So I will touch upon circular business models and design for the Bangladesh apparel industry. My name is Stephanie Schutemacher, and I represent Holland Circular Hotspot. And what we do at Holland Circular Hotspot is that we try to make the circular economy happen at an international level. So we're always looking for collaboration between the Netherlands and the rest of the world, and we try to organize and realize breeding ground in the world. As you might know, and we heard before already, is that the Netherlands has quite bold ambitions when it comes to circular economy. We want to be 100% in 2050. But at the same time, we are just a small country. We don't have many resources ourselves. And also, value chains don't stop at the border. So it's only logical that in our ambitions to become 100% circular, that we want to find collaboration internationally. And if we talk about the textiles and apparels industry, then it's only logical to also talk and look at Bangladesh. So thank you so much for having me here today, and I will try to inspire you a little bit from the design perspective and business models. So my main question is how to become a winner in circular economy, or maybe why would you want to become a winner in circular economy? Well, I can understand that in Bangladesh, circular economy can be seen as a threat. If you look at the public opinion shift from towards consuming less, for instance, and while the industry is still focused on mass production, we also see a possible shift in skills from production to more reuse and recycling, repairment skills. We see a possible job shift from Bangladesh maybe more to Europe. So that can feel quite scary, I assume. But at the same time, circular economy is an inevitable future. And there will be winners, there will be losers, and key in not being a loser, but stay in the economy and be part of the future will be your adaptive capacity. And that will mean that you will have to be able to make better use of raw materials and look beyond optimization. It will also mean that you will need to be able to adapt to new economic models, but also to move with society in sectoral and social transitions. There are a lot of developments happening at this moment or coming up soon. And looking at Europe as an important buyer market for Bangladesh, I think it's quite interesting to touch upon, really short, a couple of these developments. So, for instance, stricter eco-design norms will be happening really soon. If you look at recyclability, repairability, recycled content, also EPR, extended producer responsibility, will mean that the organization that brings the products on the market in the Netherlands, for instance, or in Europe, will be responsible for the whole value chain. So also the buyers will ask very specific things from the suppliers. At the same time, we see in the Green Deal for circular denim, also mentioned to us the denim deal, we see that as setting an example for voluntary cooperation in circular standards. And there will be more of those. So why should you start today? Well, first, of course, to keep your markets. You will have to look at regulation in export markets as a license to operate. You will also have, you can look at business opportunities as well. It will not only be about keeping the market, it will also be about changing your own market, making use of the momentum for producing quality over quantity, going from mass production with lower prices per item to quality items that maybe can be asked for more. At the same time, circular economy can also save costs, which you will see later. So I think this today is actually the momentum for change, for radical change. You're in the phase of going from a low-income country to a middle-income country, which is just the right momentum, I would say, to use all the momentum that's happening there. For instance, to scale up recycling while EPR is also developing, could really help each other. Also, looking into improved business models for Bangladesh, for instance, by keeping collection and sorting and reapplying the material that gets lost now in Bangladesh. And also what I said, we already have the denim deal together with Turkey, and that can be momentum to set change in motion also for Bangladesh. Well, you could look at circular design as a starting point. There are many starting points, but this could be one, as 80% of a product's environmental impact is made at the design stage. And circular design can help scale up in a cost-effective way. At the same time, you have to think of durable, repairable, and recyclable products. It's also about what material do you choose to use. And it's about taking into account the whole value chain, including end of life, but also how will you design your business model if you look at circular design. Well, here you see the current linear value chain. And it's very clear that, I think I skipped a slide, but that's okay. Well, to begin with, circular economy is really about rethinking, being creative, looking at the current value chain in a different way. So, of course, we all know that at the end of the value chain, there is a value leakage when materials become waste. If you look at circular design, at all stages within the value chain, you can look at waste leakage and change it into profit, for instance, or less leakage. There are a lot of strategies to limit this leakage, and for instance, for Bangladesh, you could look at the earlier mentioned cotton waste that's now being exported, but it's a value drain actually, and you could use it in your own production chain, which would be a huge opportunity for the country. But that's just a simple idea of circular design. I believe there will be many more. This is the one that I wanted to show. This might actually be a good starting point for Bangladesh. We have a methodology in the Netherlands which is called the Circle methodology, and they help helping businesses go from linear to circular, established businesses, by looking at their own context, their own products, and at the different phases of the value chain. And the fun thing to tell you is that because it was such a good example, they're now sharing their knowledge and experience all over the world, and they're setting up international hubs. For instance, already in, let me think, Turkey, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, soon to be Hong Kong, but also Sri Lanka, where they focus specifically on circular textiles. The amazing thing about this program is that it's focused on the country itself. It's not something Dutch that we want to export. It's just sharing the knowledge and making sure that locally it's getting adapted and used to improve the sector. So just to show you in a couple of steps examples of circular design and circular business models, we have, for instance, waste to wear, which is already active in China And we heard earlier before already about circular sourcing. Where do you want to get your sources from, your material that you will use? I heard, I think, about pineapple by someone, but there's also fruit leather from the Netherlands that makes actually leather-like material from mangoes. And this one that I show now in the screen is Waste to Wear, which is active in China, and they make their fibers out of recycled plastics. Another one that I felt would be directly relevant for Bangladesh is Daiku. And Daiku actually has machines that make it possible to do the dyeing process without water and without chemicals, which would directly benefit the industry, I would say. They are already active in Thailand, in Taiwan, in Vietnam, and soon also in Korea. And I think very important to mention is that they work with the big brands like Adidas and Nike. Well, a last one. If you want to look into material reuse, it's very important to look at your sorting process at the source. So going, for instance, from manufacturing waste to reuse or recycling, this can be a really interesting showcase because they sort big amounts of textile waste or textiles based on the quality of the material, but also the colors. Well, I heard the bell that I have to finish soon. So I just want to show you, we just saw a similar value chain in the presentation before me. But you can see that these were just 3 examples. We have many of them, very inspirational. We also heard that the Netherlands and Bangladesh are quite different. But at the same time, I do feel, and we heard it today as well, that technology is already there. Let's see how we can learn from each other, where we can copy, or at least see how we can adapt each other's best practices in our own contexts. So I think to finish, if I look at Bangladesh having a circular economy value chain, I would say look at the global developments and decide, jump on or lose market. I would say there is a business case for the country if you look at local recycling and production and reuse. At the same time, you have quite some examples already. I didn't see a lot of them today, but I know there are examples already in Bangladesh that try to become more circular. Just look at this conference and who organized it. And I think that we have to work with the front runners, also locally, and the ones that anticipate the changing markets, because they might be the winners of the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stephanie Schutemacher. We will be starting our next session shortly.
Bangladesh Apparel Exchange, the largest private apparel initiative in Bangladesh, promoting sustainable growth in Bangladesh's apparel industry. Let's take a look back at our journey of 9 years. Bangladesh Denim Expo, the first denim trade show, serving as a global denim network unlike any other. Sustainable Apparel Forum, a knowledge sharing and networking platform, with the prime focus on facilitating green solutions and sustainable manufacturing. Denim Innovation Night, first ever denim-focused innovative fashion show, highlighting the capabilities of Bangladesh in innovative design. Bangladesh Fashionology Summit, the ultimate platform for discovery, networking, learning, providing the scope to learn about the cutting-edge developments in the apparel and textile industries. Made in Bangladesh Week, one of the largest events focusing on the Bangladesh apparel industry. The week-long event focused on various aspects of our sustainable initiatives through various events like Dhaka Apparel Summit, Dhaka Apparel Expo, Green Factory visits, and so on, continuously striving to contribute to society, raise industry awareness, and demonstrate our focus on sustainability, circularity, and transparency. Our events have garnered huge attention from all over the world, attracting 85,000 plus national and international participants from 50 plus countries, 650 plus delegates, and 2,000 plus companies until now. Looking ahead, we will continue extending our reach beyond borders to promote the capacity and capabilities of our RMG industry, as we have done for 9 years, paving the way for a new journey towards a circular economy in Bangladesh through revolutionary projects and initiatives. So stay tuned for the excitement that awaits. Bangladesh Apparel Exchange, the largest private apparel initiative in Bangladesh, promoting sustainable growth in Bangladesh's apparel industry. Let's take a look back at our journey of 9 years. Bangladesh Denim Expo, the first denim trade show, serving as a global denim network unlike any other. Sustainable Apparel Forum, a knowledge sharing and networking platform, with the prime focus on facilitating green solutions and sustainable manufacturing. Denim Innovation Night, first ever denim-focused innovative fashion show, highlighting the capabilities of Bangladesh in innovative design. Bangladesh Fashionology Summit, the ultimate platform for discovery, networking, learning, providing the scope to learn about the cutting-edge developments in the apparel and textile industries. Made in Bangladesh Week, one of the largest events focusing on the Bangladesh apparel industry. The week-long event focused on various aspects of our sustainable initiatives. Through various events like Dhaka Apparel Summit, Dhaka Apparel Expo, Green Factory visits, and so on, continuously striving to contribute to society, raise industry awareness, and demonstrate our focus on sustainability, circularity, and transparency. Our events have garnered huge attention from all over the world, attracting 85,000 plus national and international participants from 50 plus countries, 650 plus delegates, and 2,000 plus companies until now. Looking ahead, we will continue extending our reach beyond borders to promote the capacity and capabilities of our RMG industry, as we have done for 9 years, paving the way for a new journey towards a circular economy in Bangladesh through revolutionary projects and initiatives. So stay tuned for the excitement that awaits.
Moving on to our third plenary session, Accelerating Circular Economy in Apparel and Textile, the Role of Policy. I would like to request Mr. Ahmed Shihab Zaman, National Platform Liaison, Partnership for Green Growth and Global Goals 2030 of P4G to please come up to take his seat. To join him on stage, I would like to request Mr. Omar Giyas, Director, Strategic Engagement, Bangladesh Apparel Exchange, Mr. Faisal Rabbi, Engagement and Public Affairs Team for H&M Group, Mr. Abdur Rahim Khan, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, and Mr. Mickey Magnuson, Entrepreneur in Residence and Agent for Impact of Enview, to please come up and take their seats. The total duration of the plenary will be 40 minutes. Requesting Mr. Zakir Zaman, Country Representative of UNIDO in Bangladesh, to please come up and take his seat on stage as well.
Hello? Yeah, it works. So, the session that everybody's been waiting for. I'm coming here directly from Milan, from ITMA, which is, most of you know, the biggest technology fair for the textile industry. And I can say with confidence that I know that the technology is ready. We've also been speaking, and we heard today, and been speaking in the industry for the last 10 years. We know that the industry is willing to invest, and we also know that the international investment community is also willing to invest, proven just recently. Now, it's not going to happen here in Bangladesh unless we have legislation in place, and everybody's saying they should, no, they should, and that's not going to work. So today is the discussion about what will policy bring to this discussion about circularity. I'm also saying that I'm not a policy expert, by the way, so maybe that's why I'm here. I would like to start with H&M.
Okay. Hello.
Tell me a little bit.
About what?
You recently signed up with BGMEA.
Okay.
You're quite public with your initiatives. How do you see the policy working towards what you are trying to do?
Okay. Thank you very much. That's a very important question. And you're right that we have recently signed a memorandum of understanding with Bangladesh Garments Manufacturers and Exporters Association. We have also signed an MOU just yesterday with UNDP as well. And GIZ is also sponsoring here. We have some work with GIZ as well. So the common theme that you probably can see here, that we feel that we alone probably will not be able to solve this very big problem that we have at our hand. Like Laila was talking at the very beginning when she was here as well, our head of sustainability, that the problem is big and it's global. It's not one country, one brand that we can solve it. So the whole intention from our side is to find as many stakeholders possible, as many partners possible, and try to solve this together. And of course, one of the biggest partner and most important and crucial player is just beside me. Mr. Abdur Rahim Khan is here from the government of Bangladesh. And I want to stress, like, we can do so many things, but if the policies are not right, if the policies are not supporting us, or we are not developing the right policies, it will be a difficult journey ahead of us. But we are very hopeful. We have been having communications with them, with the government as well, etc. But I would like to draw probably a bit back from the local to global first, and then from there to come here. Because why H&M Group is motivated to work on policy, or why we are having this public affairs team, and why we are working on policies so that we can do that. So if you look at the European market where we are selling our products, right now there is already some legislations, and more legislations are coming to this. In 3 to 5 years, it's quite possible that there will be mandate that you cannot enter a European market if your carbon emission is below certain level, if your product does not have certain amount of recycled material in it. Bangladesh is, for us, our kitchen, one of the most important production market that we have in the world. And if our products in Bangladesh are not produced with renewable energy and with recycled content, it might happen that the products are not getting entry to the European market. And that's a bad news for everyone. So from that perspective, we know how important it is for Bangladesh, as important it is for us Bangladeshis, and we want to work together so that we can work on our joint strength, which is the industry, which is the people, which is the appetite that we have and the resilience that we have in this country. And we want to build better policies, better frameworks, and better investments so that we can achieve these common goals that we have. For instance, if I come back to the goals of H&M Group, you probably have heard it already a couple of times today. We have to reduce GHG emission by 56% from our whole supply chain, and 60% of this happens in production market, like countries like Bangladesh. And we have to have 100% sustainably resourced material in our material by 2030. And apart from that, there is this legal requirements that are coming from European market, which we also need to comply. So that is the motivation that we have, and that is why we feel like we need to work together on the policies with all these stakeholders, including the government of Bangladesh as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So to summarize, energy and material sourcing, key focus.
Of course.
Is there any specific in the policy that you would say, this is what I need?
Yeah. So energy and circular. I'm not going to focus so much on energy today because most of these people who are there, they're probably already bored with me talking about energy. But still, on energy, we need this power purchase agreement that I have talked about quite a while, that in other countries that we have, and we can probably look it there. Here as well, so that we can increase the generation of electricity from renewable sources and also connect to our factories. Putting this aside, circularity. We feel like there are 3 or 4 different items that are there that we need to focus on. First of all, the technology is something. Right now, you have in Bangladesh a few technologies, like for instance, mechanical recycling, available in a couple of factories already. But we need to look at more advanced technologies, like chemical recycling process and other processes. How can we bring them to Bangladesh? These technologies in some countries are at a nascent stage, at some countries that developed stage, but you need to scale it up in Bangladesh. So how can we look at this sort of technology and bring them to Bangladesh and scale it up here is going to be super important. How can we support from policy level so that these investments also follow, not only from the global source, but from local sources as well. Maybe we can do joint ventures with other existing investors in Bangladesh as well. So we need to focus on technology. We need to focus on finances and investments, and also we need to focus on policies so that this investment and finances and the technology can come to the country very easily. And of course, the last piece of the puzzle probably that we know that Bangladesh is the biggest source of pre-consumer cotton waste in the world. Unfortunately, the sector is not yet matured here. What we have here is the jute market or the informal businesses. We do not want to replace the business, but we want to transform them into formal businesses so that we can interact with them, so that the feedstock is available for certain businesses. So when they come to Bangladesh with their new technologies, they can have the feedstock available. If we can solve these small bits and pieces and the puzzles together, probably we'll have the full puzzle as well solved. So that's the expectation that we have.
Clear. Thank you. Mr. Abdul Rahman Khan. Now, sorry? Yeah. Sorry. There's been a lot of legislation discussion. There's a lot of policy discussion. We understand that it's not something that you can do by yourself. So my question is, what specifically can we help you with?
Sorry, what specifically?
Can we help you with in developing a circular policy?
Thank you. Let me begin with the point that when we talk about business, what comes first in mind is profitability. All right. And when we talk about circularity in textile or apparel, then, as far as the policy intervention is required, in Bangladesh, probably we are just in the beginning. All right. Globally, of course, there is this concept is maybe not much aged, but also not new. So, when business comes to the government, then we go for a set of policy. And if you look back to the policy document like 8, which is kind of guiding tool for a 5-year term development process, the circularity has given importance. And the policy support is ensured that the business will be supported from the government to work in line with the circularity approach. And this is why, if you see, we have in recent time some regulations passed by the parliament and of course dealt by the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Affairs. So I'm not going in detail to mention the names of the acts, but what I can say you that it has created an architecture where the industry can initiate its production process in a certain manner. This is why in apparel industry, if I talk about RMG in Bangladesh, see, our RMG is heavily focused to cotton materials. But in the global market, it is not. In the global market, it is around 70% or 75% is man-made fiber. And also, our industry is not still ready to handle with the circularity approach, probably for two things. One is technology, the advanced technology we need in the industry to transform present industry into a circular kind of thing. Second is, access to finance. Here I want to mean is that if you see in the global market, Bangladeshi products are not high-end products. So that basically refers the financial strength of the industry in this country, where we need to also, intervene or facilitate financing so that both technology and entrepreneurship can take this forward in line with the global demand. I like to stop by saying circularity has got its own branding. See, if you go to a shop or, circularity has its own branding. And Bangladesh by the time has a branding in the RMG. So now is the time to actually link these two branding to maximize the portion in the global market Bangladesh we have. Because though we are second largest exporter in the global market, but in terms of number, the difference between first and second is huge. Meaning we have, the potential is there, and probably circularity in textile can make a breakthrough to minimize this gap.
So I just came from a talk with a few of the industry players in this country, and one of the things that they're saying is that it's also a big export of textile waste.
Yes, we do export textile jute, we call, textile waste. A large amount of textile jute being exported. The reason is that the industry is not ready to consume this amount of textile waste. But the RMG leaders used to discuss that if this circularity is in place, then we probably need to import textile jute from other countries. Because the demand will go up, and probably now we have 3 metric ton a day or a month. Our textile waste, I cannot recall the exact number. It is per year, 440 million tons per year. So this is a huge number, and
Yes.
and also you can say if you see the global demand is not huge. So probably the policy now support the export of textile waste, but in times I hope that we will ready to accommodate our policy to import textile waste from other countries for our industry.
Thank you. Omar, I think you have an initiative that might have an influence here. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I would like to start from the point that 440 million tons of textile waste is generated in Bangladesh apparel industry in every year. From the 440 million tons, only 5% of them are recycled, and mostly these are recycled after exporting to India. So we understand that unless and until we can make it the business case for the Bangladesh and we can close the loop within the boundary of Bangladesh, it will not be something attractive for the circular fashion. So the project we are doing, we means Bangladesh Apparel Exchange doing, we named the project Closing the Loop of Textile Waste in Bangladesh. So we have with us the InView, of course, and also we have Purify, an European textile recycle mill, and also we have with us Recover, which was already established their recycling plant in Bangladesh, and this project is funded by P4G. So what we actually want to do in the project, so we have very specific 2 goals to achieve in the project. One is to, of course, advocacy for the policy support, and the second one is coming up with some innovative business model so that it becomes win-win for the manufacturers, buyers, and also the informal markets of jute traders. Regarding the policy support, I would like to mention here that we see in Bangladesh, whenever the government come up with some sort of incentive, it's really been instrumental in promoting it. Two glaring example is, we see that when the government gives 4% incentive to the new market, non-traditional market, the apparel export to non-traditional market after the incentive has grown exponentially. We've also seen that when the government offered 3% incentive for the use of local textile, the textile industry has thrived a lot in Bangladesh. So we think since circularity is something new in Bangladesh, if also government offer some sort of incentive. It's not always the cash incentive, even for something like that, corporate tax reduction and etc., the manufacturers will be interested to put their effort in the circularity. So I also see that there has been a lot of enthusiasm today in the platform, in the hall today, and we also seen there a lot of discussions and words. But my question is, there is also needs somebody who actually sit down and take the challenges, take the responsibility to promote circularity. Because my question is, actually, there has been a lot of talks, a lot of words, but who will actually build the cat? So there needs some, I think there needs some platform of the key stakeholders of the circular fashion, like the brands, manufacturers, all the players who are promoting circularity in Bangladesh. So if this platform sit on a regular basis, it could be under the supervision or authority of the Ministry of Commerce, and they also look back at their journey that after 1, 2, or 6 months, what are the achievements we have also done, then there could be a follow-up and monitoring of the words we are having here. And we could then also turn our words into actions. So this platform is also one of the agenda we will be trying to achieve in our project.
Thank you. You want to?
I just want to complement with 2 points about incentive. Probably we have already made a proposal to the Finance Division and Bangladesh Bank to introduce incentive for circularity. I mean, this is, I hope this will be effective in the next fiscal year, but here the definition is an issue. And we are working with BGMA and BKMA, and we are trying to figure out how this incentive can be provided. Also, this will be a time-bound one. The reason is that, Bangladesh is going to graduate from LDC status by in the end of 2026. So for this, this is one issue, but incentive for a new product in RMG under the circularity approach is probably going to be considered from the next fiscal year. Second, about the platform, Ministry of Commerce is going to initiate a project, with UNIDO, to create a circular economy guideline for apparel sector in particular. And this is also going to, we will initiate by July this year. So these 2 things, from the Ministry of Commerce, will definitely help to create a platform, the point he has referred, and definitely create a motivation and awareness among the industry. And we will, of course, by this try to link our global market. Thank you.
That's great. And it's also a good bridge to the UNIDO. So you're famous for supporting collaborations and partnerships. Would you tell us a little bit?
Thank you very much. I would like to congratulate the organizer, and also thanks to organizer for inviting UNIDO to speak on behalf of UNIDO in this platform. Yes, supporting and promoting that collaboration is one of the areas where UNIDO has been working. Purpose of working, promoting collaboration is to ensure that supportive for sustainable industrial development. UNIDO has been maintaining diversified portfolio, and we are very much active in the area of circular economy. You just heard from Honorable Additional Secretary about a project, which I am coming in my next point. One of our flagship program is Switch to Circular Economy Value Chain. It's a global project, global projects for selected countries. It will focus on 3 important value chain. One is textile and garments, another is plastic and packaging, and the last one is ICT and electronics. It is funded by the European Union and government of Finland. We will conduct 2 pilots under the project. In Bangladesh, it is focused on textile and garments. One is with bestseller, the Danish clothing. The other one is colleague sitting here, H&M. Both of them will look for the textile recycling. Danish bestseller will focus on the traceability part, and the H&M was in addition to textile, that is blended textiles waste, they will also look onto ethical and traceable supply chain of PET. And of course, coming to your point for the promotion one, UNIDO recognizes that platform is an important area and that it is a supportive, it requires a supportive landscape in Bangladesh. And under the project, UNIDO will focus on policy, that capacity building, finance, and awareness raising. And it will done through its partner. As I mentioned, 2 pilots will be done through H&M and Bestseller. In addition to we have several other partners, Chatham House for the policy one. And of course, as Additional Secretary mentioned, Ministry of Commerce will be promoting this policy, financing through European Investment Bank, and also capacity building through circular economy. Colleagues are sitting over here. And we are in support of we think that the forming a platform in Bangladesh will be beneficial. It has a multifocal benefits. For example, it can serve as a forum for bringing all stakeholders to discuss about the challenges and promoting a solution for the circular fashion. In addition to that, it will also support on increasing transparency in the textile and garments industry, and also can promote the policies. Giving you one example, what is happening in the Europe. There is a European stakeholder platform for circularity that has demonstrated a successful one, where policy development are presented and emergent issues are discussed among the wide range of stakeholders. For Bangladesh, such a platform in the textile sector would be helpful, but it has to be ensured that other stakeholders, such as informal platforms, informal stakeholders, women entrepreneurs, are part of this platform. That platform scope and purpose of the platform should be clearly defined. For example, whether it will work as a primary discussion point, or it will help as an advisory support to the government, or it will have decision-making functions. All these things, and the platform can accelerate the momentum that has started on circularity for the textile industries in Bangladesh. Not only that, if the platform and the circularity can show the success, there is a wide market, huge market. Bangladesh can get benefit of that. It will also encourage other sector, for example, plastics, agriculture sector, to adopt circularity in Bangladesh. I will stop here.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I look forward to see the output, of course.
Thank you.
Shihab, P4G.
Right.
Tell us.
Yeah. So P4G has a partnership here in Bangladesh as a closing gap on the textile waste. Before here, we had this partnership with the same kind of partnership in Kenya. And the success story in Kenya really encourages us to work in Bangladesh, as Omar was mentioning that only the 5% of waste are being recycled in the textile industry. So through this partnership, we are trying to create a value chain of high quality and high volume of waste. This partnership will also introduce the modern equipment and technology, which will be used to post-production and to recycle it into virgin waste, virgin fiber. So the entire project aims not only to the waste management, but it also create the new jobs in the market, and it will also prevent the textile waste into leaking the environment. So that was the entire partnership plan.
So I think the summary here is that we're all trying to prove the business case, that the technology is ready, the investment will come, to the policymakers. So it's a little bit also up to the industry to show, and to the policymakers to stay attuned and listen and adopt.
Maybe I take the opportunity to just add one last point. Rahim Bhai was mentioning about the finances and everything. So I just wanted to mention some of the things that has been already discussed in the morning session. For instance, from H&M Group, we have been investing in Italy for this small solar park so that we can produce our own electricity for our own operation. If we can do that in Italy, we can probably do this in Bangladesh as well if that is needed. I don't know. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on the legal policies, etc. But most importantly, it depends that for circularity, if we have to have something here, if some technology has to come here, if some investment wants to come here, probably they want to ensure the feedstock is available. Because you have the highest number of cotton waste in Bangladesh, but right now there is no formal supply chain. There is no way to know whether I'll be able to get every bit of it in my production or not, because the amount may sound a lot, but when you think about the overall supply chain, it probably is not enough. So how can we get that? So we need to ensure the informal supply chain is becoming formal and the feedstock for this sort of circular businesses are available.
And you see policy in that?
And exactly. And that's where the policy can play a role so that this becomes available for the investment to continue in Bangladesh.
I think that's a great end of the session. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Just one very quick point. I have mentioned about the incentive, just to avoid the misunderstanding, because we have some friends from press and media, that it is not decided that circular economy product is going to have the incentive from the next fiscal year. There will be a renaming of existing incentive under the RMG we call new product. So this new product, we are working together to figure out, to define and to include this circular approach. So please, my friends from media and press, because I don't also like to see next day a headline that is going to enjoy the incentive. Thank you.
Understood. All right. Clear. Media, did you get it? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'd like to request you to stand together for another photograph, please.
I'm sorry, this is not part of the plan. It's a bit awkward because generally people fall asleep after a bit of sumptuous lunch. So we thought that let us create a bit of excitement. And I have a real excitement because I was saying, you know, while you all sit and think that circular economy is something close to moon, the time is not ripe still for Bangladesh. I'm looking particularly the H&M team here. But I've got someone for real. It's not me. Can you see something? This is a fiber. It's not for, please trust, this is the man. Please give him applause because You cannot imagine what he has done. I was listening to his story for some time. This has been made from pineapple. He is a BUFT graduate, first batch. And this, to my shock, is from?
Also jute.
Jute. You tell what you have done.
Okay.
And don't worry. You know, this T-shirt, it reads as joyous, joy in circular economy. Now the Dutch friends, it's joy in circular economy, pineapple T-shirt, beyond cotton. It's fully made of pineapple. Hang on. It sells for 9.85 euro. Am I right?
US dollar.
US dollar, okay, a little bit less, FOB. Now you tell why and how you have done.
Okay. Thank you so much to give me the privilege to speak over here. My name is Tauhid. I am the founder of Classical Handmade Product BD Limited. I'm also the supplier to H&M Home, Zara Home, and other big retail brands.
Mike, listen to him.
Yes, we are supplying sustainable products out of different kind of raw material like banana fiber, banana bark, straw, palm leaf, elephant grass, and we are making rugs and baskets for different brands. And now we are actually becoming tier 2 for big textile mills, because as we are sourcing a lot of natural sustainable material, we are able to supply different kind of fiber for textile blending. So jute is, yeah.
I went to Ambiente in Frankfurt this February, and there I saw a fiber or thing made of 100% made of
jute.
No, banana.
Oh,
banana, cola.
Yeah.
And now I have found out this is the man. I was looking for him, so he surfaces.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, we are in the market. We definitely we want to grow with you step by step. If you come with a big quantity, that is a big problem for us. But with a small quantity, we'll be able to give you the proper supply chain. Thank you so much.
You have made jeans
out of indigo. Out of India. It's in Hasnatur brand. It's a German brand we are selling, and their selling price is 200 euro. One day, yeah.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, and now we will be moving on to our 4th plenary session, Accelerating Circular Economy in Apparel and Textile, the Role of Policy. I would like to request the speakers to please come up and take their seats. Mr. Mumit Hassan, Director of Business and Operations, Bangladesh Reverse Resources. Ms. Stephanie Schutemakar, Head of Communication and member of Holland Circular Hotspot. Ms. Gagan Bansal, Head of Material Innovation and Strategy at H&M Group. Professor Mateen Abdullah of BRAC University. And Dr. Michael Claude, Project Manager with GIZ Bangladesh. Requesting you to please come up and take your seats. Total duration of the plenary will be 40 minutes.
Very good afternoon to this exciting panel. We have 40 minutes, so we will be guided by the gong, but we will have enough time to have a nice conversation. Usually, and thanks a lot to the organizers, especially of course the head of everything, Mustafis. Mika was the moderator of the previous session. At home they call me Mickey, so maybe that's the qualification that I carry to moderate this session. I represent a GIZ project that is involved in the development of social and environmental standards in the leather and textile industries in Bangladesh. So I was very happy also to see that the Director General of the Department of Environment was here. Now we had the very valuable presence of the Additional Secretary at the Ministry of Commerce. Ministry of Foreign Affairs is involved also in the P4G project. So this is very exciting because usually in these kind of events we see high-ranking politicians, but on the side they are also owners of factories. And here we have really the let's say, body of the politics with us. That is very helpful. But in this panel, we're going to dig a bit more into the, let's say, materiality of things. If I may start, I would like to start with Metin Adullah from Brack University. Because, as we all know, sustainability, which is not circularity, but sustainability is usually addressed on 3 dimensions. And that includes the social dimension. And Brack University, together with the Copenhagen Business School, has engaged in a very interesting project that is trying to map and identify where the current post-industrial waste flows go in Bangladesh and India, I believe. So why don't you tell us a little bit of where you are, what you have already found, and how the existing social net around the jute sector is constituted.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. So we started our project about 1 year ago. So our goal was to map, one of the project goals was to map the pre-consumption waste or post-production waste, whichever way you say it. So in that, we basically looked at the collection process, the sorting process, then storage, export, and we also looked at one of the narrative is it goes to India, right? And that's it. And the other places, other part is in the landfills and things like that. But we also found that there are upcycling clusters in Bangladesh. We found one in Pabna, over 500 shops, which take the large pieces, and these are all export-oriented, right? In Saidpur, there is also a cluster with 100 or 400 shops. These are also export-oriented, and the SME Foundation is helping them with training and financing. So these are upcycling, and the interesting part is the other cluster, which is some of you might know, that Bogura, I forget the Adom, I forgot the name of the place. What they are doing is they're doing something different. They are actually making yarn. So they are making yarn. So according to most of the statistics, even the BISIC is helping them. There are 50,000 people involved in this Shawalpur gram, and over like 1.5 crore worth of yarn is produced every day and sold to different places in Bangladesh, and then it's being recycled. So there are recycling clusters already there in Bangladesh. Of course, the big guys are coming in, recovery is coming in, but what I'm saying is, even in the informal sector, so there is livelihood that is there in the local ecosystem, right? So we need to consider whenever we talk about policy, or the interesting thing was I heard the word belling the cat, right? So hopefully in this panel, somebody will name the cat. So.
Great, thank you so much for now. this is really relevant, and we're looking forward to the results of the study when it's published as well, because, as you said, to consider also the effects of any policies is also the responsibility of those who design them, and the social effects of maybe taking away some parts of an existing upcycling system is also relevant. Now, further down the line, reverse resource is a prominent stakeholder in this area. Again, we're talking now a lot about jute and recycling. That is not circularity, it's an element and it's a step and it's very relevant, etc. It's not circularity, but it would be great for the few of us who maybe don't know what reverse resources does and is, that you briefly explain what your business case is, because you're also involved on a, let's say, policy or a service provider level in advising and supporting other institutions in international projects, etc. But you also have a proper business, let's say. Yes.
Thank you so much. At first, I'd like to wish everyone a very good afternoon. It's really nice to be here, and I would like to thank Mustafiz Bhai for the invite. It's really fascinating to see and hear so many important discussions being happening and so many fantastic ideas being generated. So just to answer what you said, Michael, what we are doing, basically reverse resources, if I say in one line, we are a software as a service platform. Our main goal or our main existence is to provide the traceability of the reverse supply chain. So we exist so that we can provide the tool that can be used by all the stakeholders who are involved in the reverse supply chain. Let's just say it can be a factory, it can be a recycler, it can be brands, it can be waste handling companies. Whoever are a part of the supply chain, they can use and access our tool for making their day-to-day activities easier. And while using this tool for conducting their businesses, their a traceability would be generated automatically. So reverse resources is actually a bit different than any other traceability service providers in a way, because in our case, you don't have to get involved in additional data inputting activities. In our case, we have tried to design a tool that can help the stakeholders in conducting their day-to-day businesses, and the traceability or the trace would be a result of that conducting the business through the tool. Now, if I may say how we are actually working in this, so the idea is, in our case, we collaborate with different brand partners. In many cases, we also collaborate in multi-stakeholder projects where through the project or through the brand partners, we give trainings or give technical support to the factories so that they can get their waste segregated in a certain way that is mostly suitable for recycling. That's one part of our activities. The other part can be considered when we are providing the tools that can be used for, let's just say, how much waste is being segregated in the factory, how much of it is actually going to recycling, and to which recycler it is going, and what kind of recycled products are being made with that waste. So all these questions all these answers can be found by using the platform. That's basically how we are trying to support the supply chain. And just to add a little bit, I was really fascinated when I was hearing Motin Bhai saying that there are some circular value chains already existing in our country. The idea for reverse resources or our company is we want to make these stories visible to everyone. We want to make the story, we want to make the information transparent to everyone so the circularity can be achieved. You very rightfully said recycling or proper waste management is just one piece of the puzzle. Circularity is not just that. The idea is if you have the tool to trace exactly, if you know exactly where your waste is going, only then you can start having conversations about bringing it back, hence closing the loop. So that's what we can support. That's where we want to collaborate, and that's where we want to support. So that's who we are. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much. And maybe a brief follow-up question. Where do you see currently, both technologically, but also in practical terms, separation, cleanliness, or whatever, the major challenges if we only look at, let's say, cotton and RMG?
All right, thank you. I would like to say, you see, when we use terminologies like, improved waste management and efficient supply chain, these can sound like very big words. But what we are basically saying for factories is to just not mix the black with white, or not mix the cotton with cotton spandex. Some things that can, based on our experience, it actually, generally we say that it's easier said than done. In this case, we have experienced that it can be a bit opposite, because in our experience, we have worked with a lot of factories. I had the opportunity to travel around the world to visit many factories. When you first start talking about it, it may hear that, okay, I would need a lot of manpower. It's very difficult to start. But once you start it, then you realize it's basically just about making a few tweaks in the cutting operation or maybe the storage operation, and our tool can help you in keeping the data. So what we have seen, I think Gagan is here, we are doing some meaningful collaboration with H&M as well. The deal is, it is actually not so complicated in my experience. When you're talking about implementing segregation on the ground, there is one challenge, that is whenever you are trying to do something new, obviously there is this idea about change resistance that obviously comes because things have been done in a certain way for a long period of time. Whenever you're trying to make some tweaks or trying to do something different, that change of shift of mindset, that thing to enter a cutter man who's just cutting every day, just that, okay, there's black, I cannot throw white in it. So to do that, that is basically the major challenge to implement it, in my experience. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mohit. Now we come to Gagan Bansal, who is the global head of materiality at H&M. That to me sounds like you're the Shakib Al-Hassan of future technologies for H&M. So it's a great pleasure to have you here. And maybe if you connect to these previous discussion points, let's say beyond what we are facing right now, where do you see technological elements that will come up in Bangladesh, either from the material perspective or from, we heard from Faisal, the chemical recycling elements? Where do you see something that is closer to us right now?
And thank you very much. So let me just start with saying what Mohit just said. First of all of us here, we have to reset our mind. We have to rethink, because we have to regenerate and we have to re-innovate. Waste is no more waste, it's a resource. And that needs the whole reset of mind. And it's going to take a lot of time, a journey, which I think we have taken. We have taken quite many years talking about it, and now we have reached a stage where we see actions happening. I just came from ITMA last week, and I was amazed to see how everybody is talking about sustainability, circularity, new processes, new machinery, to make sure that whatever we are getting out, there is nothing wasted. Even in a knitting machine, there is a SmartX AI that has been put so that the waste from a knitting machine should not be out, and as much as right material comes out so that it's not wasted. So in every aspect of it, the waste is considered today as very, very precious, and we are talking zero waste in that perspective. So whatever we create, and we know in our industry that we will not be able to make it zero because there is a certain aspects to it, how do we bring it back? And that is where the technological developments are happening. And last 2 years, when you said this position looks like I'm a hero, but last 2 years, we have been really going into the depth of all the innovations that are happening across the world. We started a project in Bangladesh with the reverse resources, with our suppliers. We brought them, we taught them, we said that, okay, let's segregate the waste and then give it to our recyclers. That was one part of it. But the second part, which we now think, and I think first phase is going well, we still need to take our journey there, but at least we have started the journey. So mechanical cotton recycling, I think we have reached a stage where we are saying we are okay. We still need it, but we are okay. But after a certain point, you cannot have mechanical recycling blended in your products at a particular certain percentage. The reason being, the mechanical you go, the shorter fiber you create. And you cannot have durability as a concern and appearance as a concern on your garments. And that is where the mechanical cotton recycling has a limitation. And when we talk about this, what is next then? Then we have few technologies which are coming up, and I would like to name few here. So in ITMA, we had a meeting with Reater, the spinning guys, and they are right now working on a spinning technique which makes the fiber, which is the mechanical fiber that we are doing, a higher length than what it is being reached today. That's one part of it, which is mechanical. Then we have Purfi, who's also talking about regenerating, and they have a IP rights towards it. They don't explain the full technology, which is great because they have something which is great in their hand, and they talk about high fiber length. But they are also in a stage where they are starting off, and they are working towards, and we are doing pilots with them. Then we have technologies which are coming from chemical. We have technologies like RenewCell, IFCs. These man-made fibers are coming from the feedstock of cotton, and that will ultimately be used in all our products. Then coming back to blends that we have a lot in Bangladesh, we have Circ, we have Sodra, we have Blottex. All these technologies are coming up, HK Rita, which are trying to segregate the blends through different technologies and showing the path to the industry that this is possible. Lastly, polyester. We have a concern in Bangladesh about plastic bottles. We have not reached in Bangladesh the industry where the China has already excelled, because all the recycled polyester is coming from either China or India. Where we have certain projects that we are starting now with Switch to Circular Economy, UNIDO, but I think plastic will be within the circularity of Coke. They also started it, the circularity project. I just heard in the morning that Unilever is talking about that they will use all their bottles. So bottles is not going to be the game for garments. Everybody will keep their own resources because they think that it's not a waste. It's their resource. They want to bring it back to their own industry. So we have to move towards textile to textile polyester. And this also is a very, very, technologies which have started coming up bigger. We have few technologies already existing in China, and we have some which are just coming up. So in sum up, I see that the industry has a lot of technologies right now, which are some are on the pilot stage, some are on the scale-up stage, and some are on the innovation stage. We have made garments out of CO2. LanzaTech, that technology is like amazing. There is no fiber involved in it. It's a CO2 emission that we have captured and made a garment out of it. So things are happening. We were talking about pineapple fiber here, banana fiber here, jute fiber here. All these things are possible and are happening in the industry. But how do we take them to a scalable level? Because all these innovations cost money. And that is where we need to come together as an industry. Every supply chain partner has to come. And that's why we are not saying it's your job. We are standing behind it. Leila said it in the morning. I'm saying it again. We are here. We want to work towards innovative technologies. We are ready for initial higher payments because we understand that for decades, nothing has happened. And now if we have to make the change, everyone has to contribute. So we will contribute there.
Thank you so much. Let's hope your consumers are also there soon. And now we come to Stephanie Schuitemaker, almost, from Holland Circular Hotspot. And let me tell you a small story before we come to you. The cats. So some people have already identified waste as a resource. And somebody just told me behind the scenes that apparently there are some informal traders that get a lot or have been getting a lot of the waste outside of the factory doors. So apparently some of the producers and the factories have to deliver their cutting waste to these intermediate business people. This is not a formal process, and as was discussed in the previous panel, there are requests towards policies or to get that a bit away from this informal sector. It is apparently especially delicate because in some areas this is a venue of income for local politicians or other stakeholders that are using that as a resource. This is a challenge for this system. So from your experience in designing circularity processes, etc., how do you have similar examples where, let's say, the ideal theory, because we have the technology, we have the, let's say, platforms, we have the producers, we have the brands, we have some policymakers who are interested, so we have a proper setup, let's say, but there is something in reality that is creating a big obstacle to make this happen. If you could just rely on your experience, if you can encounter some example that is similar to that, and eventually even how you dealt with this.
Thank you so much for the question. I think that there are some examples of making sure that also the informal sector keeps a role. Of course, that's important. I think that should be on top of mind, for sure, because it's about the livelihood of people, it's about their income. We cannot just take it away from them. At the same time, we do need to change, but it's really important to look at how can we involve them in that. And I don't have personal experience in how to do it, but I do know that there are quite some examples. I know that in Latin America, they're also working with a similar issue, with a quite big informal sector in the waste management, and they are also looking into and working towards including that informal sector in the formal to-be sector. The same thing is for the African continent. There are quite some nice examples. But we also have, for instance, Sweep Smart, which is active in Bangalore, and I think that's quite nearby. It's this region. And they're also working on how to make from waste something positive in people's lives, not by being an informal sector, but involving them in the solution, in a circular solution.
Fantastic. And is there anything else that you've heard now or in the previous panel that from your, let's say, broad experience in redesigning elements that you think would be helpful for us to keep here in Dhaka?
Well, I think if I look at the title of this session, Next Steps for Post-Industrial Recycling, I think that's not ambitious enough for this panel, and I think the panel does understand that and is also already touching upon that. Of course, it's a really important step to create like a proper waste management system or an infrastructure, but we do, or you do, together, we need to have a higher, ambitious dot on the horizon. And of course, recycling is an important part of it. It would be a great first step, but in the end, also for Bangladesh, the bigger business models, the real changes that make like a system change should also be a topic.
Great, fantastic. To not make Morten and Sandra sweat too much, I think we would now, like in a proper Netflix show, refer to next year's Circular Summit, hopefully with these same panelists again, to see where have we reached by then. And BAE and Mustafiz has promised us that next year there will also be a technology fair, so we can relate also what is happening in Milan, and we will see it here in Dhaka as well. And I hope that we can continue this conversation and telling stories of success, of advancing, and how to connecting the social, the environmental, and the economic business factor to this journey. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you very much. Requesting all of you to stand together for a group photograph, please. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will go for a short coffee break for 10 minutes. Bangladesh Circular Economy Summit and Bangladesh Circular Apparel and Textile Forum is organized by Bangladesh Apparel Exchange in collaboration with Lotus Foundation in partnership with P4G and powered by Deutsche Gesellschaft für Internationale Zusammenarbeit, GIZ GmbH, Embassy of the Netherlands in Bangladesh, and HM Group. This initiative has been possible only because of your support. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I'd like to mention the coffee break is only for 10 minutes, and then we will move on with the program.
In the glorious journey of the world of blue, Bangladesh has made incredible advancement while unleashing the huge potential of denim industry. Bangladesh Denim Expo sets forth in celebration of this successful feat. The 10th edition of Bangladesh Denim Expo focused on circularity for bringing positive changes in the whole denim supply chain. It hosted 5 seminars on the pressing issues of denim industry, focusing on the central theme of circularity. The panel discussions were attended by various experts from home and abroad. The Trend Zone exhibited some phenomenal circular innovations and sustainable development techniques. Even the stalls were made of repurposed fabric rolls, which itself is a unique example of circularity and its diverse benefits. Join us next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting shortly, requesting you to take your seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting now, requesting all of you to kindly take your seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting now, requesting all of you to kindly take your seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting now, requesting all of you to kindly take your seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward with our program, the first edition of Bangladesh Circular Economy Summit is organized by Bangladesh Apparel Exchange in collaboration with Lotus Foundation and in partnership with P4G. Thanks to Lotus Foundation and thanks to P4G, also thanks to our Powered By partner, Deutsche Gesellschaft für International Zusammenarbeit, GIZ GmbH, Embassy of the Netherlands in Bangladesh, and H&M Group. Their valued support has made this initiative possible. I'd like to mention again that free Wi-Fi is available in this facility. You can use username BCSE and password BCES at 2023. You can also scan the QR code on the backside of your ID to see the agenda of the entire program today. And now we will have an online presentation explaining coming into action, how the government can play their role. This segment will be conducted by Mr. Arnoud Passanier, Strategic International Advisor, Circular Economy. Duration of the presentation will be 10 minutes. Once again, it will be an online presentation by Mr. Arnoud Passanier.
Thank you very much. And it's an honor for me to talk with you on the first Bangladesh Circular Economy conference. I hope a lot of those conferences will follow. At the same time, it would be really great if we not only talk with each other about the circular economy, but come into action. Just do it. And for that, we need courage. We need also collaboration. We need a lot of transparency, because if we only talk and say that we are going to do something and not doing anything, well, the belief in the future of the garment industry, the future of what will be a good sustainable solution for the climate change, for biodiversity loss, for pollution in the world is deteriorating. So we need to take action, but also show that it's really being done. And of course, a lot of challenges will be there to find solutions. And I think a lot of challenges and maybe also innovations have been discussed today. But for that, it's also very important that you are not alone to find the new solutions. And for that, in my experience as a policy advisor in the government, it's crucial that the government is a partner in this voyage towards circularity. So it's not only the industry, also the brand owners and the retailers, but also and the waste managers, but also the government who can play a significant role. And I hope that the government of Bangladesh is also there, and hopefully we can set up collaborations also on a government-to-government level. But to enlighten you on what can be done as a government, of course we can regulate. That is a normal role the government can play. Regulate in such a way that things we don't want anymore, that it's prohibited, and things that we want to achieve, that sometimes we can set new norms and standards. At the same time, it's not only about regulation, it's also about giving the market incentives. And I don't know if the element of the instrument of EPR systems, extended producer responsibility, is being discussed. I think it's a crucial instrument worldwide to create a market incentive for brand owners and retailers bringing garments to the market, that they are involved also in the solution of the waste management, so the collection, sorting and recycling, and eventually also repairing the garments in the end, after discarding of the garments by the consumers. So it's very important that that there is an incentive to look at the whole value chain and also work together in the value chain to make things happen, to change the system. And it's not only about those market incentives and regulations, but also about getting together. And the convening power of government is crucial, I think, in getting things done. Not only finding new innovations, solutions for a lot of challenges in getting the closed loop, but also to see how we can work together and learn together in networks to find the solutions and scale up those solutions in society. I think that is really crucial, that creating networks, inviting people, it's always about people who can change and take the leadership to that change, to invite those people to the table. And it's, it's not only good as a government that can do that, because it's always a neutral player in the market, but it's a very effective one. So it is crucial that governments play that role as well. And last but not least, it's also about challenging the industry to raise the bar to achieve the highest goals possible with all the technical but also social innovations which you can provide. So it's working along the value chain, seeing for opportunities to make things better, to make things transparent. So also show your results, show your successes, but also show your failures, your mistakes, or what didn't work, because that in the network is very important to share. And then we will provide with the new innovations which solves a lot of environmental issues. And it's not only about the environmental issues which are important in that value chain, but also to see how together in that network, in that circular network, we can make a just transition. So it's not only about having the perspective also of the workers in the factories to not only make better garments, recycle garments, repairing garments, but also to have good labor conditions and a future of good and also jobs which have a good salary for those who work there. So with that, in the value chain, you can promote that together with the industry. And well, as a government, as a Dutch government, we took the initiative together with some companies to start with the denim deal. I think that that has been on the table today, but it was a collaborative approach where we signed a covenant as a ministry together with a lot of stakeholders involved, and not only Dutch stakeholders, also to start with some spinners, weavers, and manufacturers in Turkey, by example, to set the standard, the higher standard of using recycled materials in new garments. And it started with the denim industry. But for sure, we are now looking for the next phase after 3 years of working together to see what we can do in that whole value chain to not only recycle more, but also look at the cotton industry, at how they can make regenerative cotton. Maybe also to make the whole value chain much more transparent, to take further steps in that collaboration, find new solutions. And therefore, it's also interesting that that new phase will be a real international one. So we want to achieve a sort of global movement with the industry, with NGOs and knowledge institutes to see how we can move forward as a government, the Dutch government, but we would like also to invite other countries, other governments to join the movement as well. Because it's always important that you see what you can do as governments together with the industry. So I hope that inspires you and ourselves to also challenge your government to join the movement. I am sure that in the next phase and in the next Bangladesh Circular Economy conference, we can celebrate together the next steps we have taken together. You can count on us as a Dutch government, and hopefully others will join as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will have a fireside chat on decent work in a circular economy, how to achieve a just transition. I would like to request the speakers to please take their seat on the dais. I would like to request Apurva Shankar, Senior Labor Market Consultant, Circle Economy, the Netherlands, Noreen Chaudhry, Head of Labor Rights Program, Lotus Foundation, and Sandra Gonza, Strategy and Business Impact Consultant, Tailwind, to please come up and take their seat on the dais. You have 40 minutes in hand.
All right, well, one of the last sessions. I know you're all very attentive. Yeah, so I'm very excited about this chat with the both of you because we're talking about decent work, but I think throughout the day we've been talking about the circular economy and how transitioning to a circular economy brings so many values environmentally, resource use, but I think one thing we haven't really touched upon as much throughout the day is sort of the social side, the people involved within this economy or this new economy. So maybe to start us off, I have a question for you, Noreen, and that's really to say, when we are talking about a just transition, what are we talking about? And how does this mean, how does this relate to the concept of transitioning not only to a circular economy, but net positive economy? What do we mean?
Thanks, Sandra, and thanks, Apurva. I love this all-female panel. I wish we could have more of these, but no. I think everything aside, and right before this session, I was having a discussion with someone. Why do we keep calling it just transition? It is a transition. Climate change in upon us. Inequality has manifested itself far more transparently than ever before. So I think the bigger question is the transition for who, and who decides what just looks like. And we were pondering on this, and I think the answer we landed on is that is going to be determined by the impacted communities. And I think from the loudest side, in terms of context, we are a philanthropic organization that works at the nexus between climate breakdown and inequality. And for us, just transition is about ensuring dignity. It's about bringing in a fair and equitable future that includes safeguarding against the impacts of climate and on the socioeconomic systems. And basically, in literal terms, it's about climate-proofing jobs and businesses.
Perfect, thank you. I mean, a very, very similar question to you, Apurva, but I think slightly different. You're with circular economy, and with you guys, you talk about the circular economy, two names, different things. But basically, how do you guys approach it at circular economy?
Thanks a lot, Sandra, and I think yeah, it's great to be here today. Thanks to all the conference organizers as well. And I think I totally echo what Noreen was saying, which is that we also ask ourselves this question often, right? Just transition is such a loaded word, and I think it automatically creates this sense of disconnect. It just feels like it's a foreign concept that's a bit hard to grasp. But I think really, you know, it's about moving towards a sort of a system in which we look at social, environmental, as well as ecological unity and harmony. So we look at this triple bottom line approach. And from Circle Economy's perspective, so Circle Economy is an impact organization based in Amsterdam, and I think you've heard from some of our colleagues earlier today as well. So one of our colleagues said earlier today, Ola, that we are currently consuming about 100 billion tons of resources globally. And out of this, only 7.2% is recycled back into the system. So we are really operating, you know, at a very critical stage where the current system where we're focusing on, the take, make, use, waste, linear economy is not going to be sustainable. So the circular economy is really about reimagining how can we work within the boundaries of our planet. How can we make sure that we have jobs that are equitable in the future? How can we redistribute wealth and power? Unfortunately, I think the circular economy agenda is often quite heavy on the environmental aspect and the economic aspect, but not enough on the social aspect. So I think this is something really critical for us to unpack further.
Thank you. And I guess going to jump right back to you, because I think right before this we were talking about the context, who defines a just transition, but also where the conversation is coming from. There's a lot of EU policies that are happening in the global north. What's happening in the global south? And I think you had a perspective on this and where this is being determined.
Absolutely. So I think one of the things also to recognize is that circularity is not really a new concept. The term circular economy might be new, but circularity has been embedded in our culture for several decades. It's very much a part of our DNA. I think especially in the global south, we do come from economies where we have had to innovate. If I look at my personal experience and my grandmother's generation, if there was a piece of cloth, if there was a sari, a sari was never thrown away. It would be passed down across generations. It would be repaired if there was any kind of tear that is required. If the sari was no longer usable, it would be torn and used as cloth for cleaning. But this is a very simple example of circularity, but it is circularity. It is another form of circularity, and this has always been a part of of the kind of life we've always lived. So the first thing I'd like to say is I think circularity is very much embedded in the global south, in our DNA as well. And so that's the first thing. And I think also when we talk about circular economy frameworks and models, this is also based on our research. A lot of the focus is on the global north. And a lot of literature is focused around what are the studies and what are the trends that emerge from there. But actually, we need to really also shed light on what is existing currently. What practices can we lean on from Bangladesh, from the region, that are actually serving as guiding lights? And hopefully we can also talk about some of those in the course of this discussion.
Thank you so much. I mean, back to you, Noreen. And basically, I think you sort of mentioned it in your introduction of what a just transition is. But then I guess my question is, what do we mean, like where do jobs come into play in this conversation? How are current workers impacted? What are the challenges they're facing, and what does this transition actually impact them?
Yeah, I think language in itself, the terminology that we've used is divisive. And I love what Apurva said, and we were having the same conversation. We might call it circular economy, but I think the old saris became blankets, and we've all grown up with this reality. So I think on this side, I think whether we call it green jobs, circular economy, it is all part and parcel of this transition that we have to make in this crisis that we find ourselves in. And I think in terms of jobs, be it a job in this new economy or emerging sector or a green industry, it all comes down to the basics. The basics is that we're protecting workers' rights, we're building worker agency. It's about being safe, being fairly paid, and something that enhances human dignity and addresses inequality through industry. I think industry is well poised because the private sector has the ability to unlock capital and innovation on what the jobs of tomorrow will be determined on how we define it today, and that always hinges on listening to those closest to the ground. And I think that's where the solution lies. And in terms of what the jobs of tomorrow might look like, I think this is where we need to start. And that's where philanthropic capital can play. We can take the chance, and we have a higher appetite for taking risks on what works for workers. And I think it's also speaking and meeting the workers or the impacted communities where they're at. I think about 3 years ago during the pandemic, we had the brilliant idea. It's like, okay, how can we position Bangladesh as a leader in the just transition journey? So we brought in innovators, actors, key advocates from the climate, gender, and labor movement. And we thought we were going to get a 10-point action plan. What we walked away with is, how do you expect us to come up with a joint plan when we're not even talking in the same language? And I think let's go back to the basics, meet the constituents where we are at, and together define what a good future might look like.
100%. I think, similarly, I think at Circular Economy, you published a new sort of report recently, and I'm hoping you'll give a bit more light into what that actually entails. But you guys talk about circular jobs specifically, and so how does that, relate to decent work, green jobs? How do you define it at Circular Economy?
So I really like what Noreen said also, which is about meeting communities where they are impacted, and I think speaking the same language, super important. So in terms of circular economy, we talk about how, what we say in a nutshell is that in transitioning towards, the future, what we want to do is place people at the heart. So this is really our message. We want to place people at the heart of this whole movement, right? But the truth is, we talk about how jobs are going to change. We say that, the estimates are that about 6 to 7 million jobs are going to be created as a result of the circular transition. But when you actually dig deeper into those numbers, you see that about 78 million jobs are going to be destroyed, and about 78 million are going to be created, and 72 million are going to be destroyed. That's going to mean huge shifts, right? That means that we need to make sure that workers are upskilled, have the right level of skills for these kind of job profiles that are going to change. And this was the reasoning or the driver behind behind undertaking our most recent study. So recently, which is about a month ago, the Circular Economy ILO and the World Bank came together to launch an initiative called Jobs in the Circular Economy. And the whole aim of the initiative is to measure, model, and monitor jobs in the circular economy, and really also to make that very tangible and practical. So we also want to understand, let's look at case studies, because we talk about these concepts and when we don't have cases that we can lean back on, it often seems difficult to relate to. So what we also want to do is to really highlight practical examples and case studies that can help us in understanding what these profile of jobs could look like. And we basically want to develop the knowledge base about decent work that policymakers and decision makers need to fulfill the promise of new jobs in the circular economy. Now, when it comes to our framework, so circular economy also has a framework of defining jobs. So we define jobs as core circular jobs, enabling circular jobs, and indirect circular jobs. When we talk about these, they are mostly defined from the dimension of how they contribute to, directly closing the loop. So they're considered as a core job. So jobs in prioritizing regenerative resources, for instance, are core jobs. Enabling jobs are jobs that are at the shell. So they are outside the core, and what they do is they support the uptake of circular jobs. And then we have indirect circular jobs, which are jobs in education and public sector, which, again, have a more indirect impact. When we talk about decent jobs, the picture is quite different, because the truth is that we still do not have global indicators that measure what decent jobs look like. And this is also part of the research and study that we want to do. We want to really also unearth, and come to a common language of what kind of indicators can we create globally, so that we can actually be able to measure not just the type of job, but also the quality of the job, and really be able to determine how decent jobs actually are. So I'll stop here and hand over to you, Sandra.
No, definitely. And I think there's a lot of synergies in a lot of what you do. And I think one thing that I was just thinking right now is just understanding, if we think about a transition in which decent jobs are not considered, are not contributing to this, what does that look like? What does that mean for workers if we're not looking at the transition that involves decent work for them? And I'm wondering if either one of you can sort of paint a picture of, like, what does it mean? Why is it important for us to be doing so now and considering it now as we're developing this transition?
Okay, so if I could summarize, what you're saying is, if we take the decent aspect or the qualitative aspects about a job as part of this transition pathway, it's not going to be, there isn't going to be a transition without having the fundamentals embedded in place. And I think that requires, like I said, building agency, jobs that offer dignity, there is safe working conditions, and most importantly, there is the ability to speak up. And I think the problem with defining metrics is it's so contextual, but these are fundamental rights that are part of the realm of human rights. And I think otherwise we're just going to be transferring the problem every time we move to a different evolution of what a job can look like. I think an add-on into this aspect is investing in the skills that are going to be needed and fast accelerating. I had to learn from my 14-year-old son on how to use ChatGPT, and I still wasn't very good. But I think, and it's not just the stresses of climate breakdown that's going to shape the way what jobs look like, it's AI. I think the creator of artificial intelligence at Google, after creating all this, quit his job recently, saying that the accelerated space of AI is moving at a rate that is actually eerily scary. So, and we need to equip ourselves, but there's also an opportunity. How can we use technology and AI to start transitioning towards these skills? I think Britspan recently did a study, and this is where policymaking and policy actors in the private sector can play a role, on 19 ASEAN countries, on what are the top 5 sectors. It's for green jobs in the next 5 years. On the top 5 sectors were all related to part and parcel or pieces of the circularity model. It's included solar paneling, electronic vehicles, waste management, a built environment, and I can't remember the last one. But I think those conversations that are having, but they're having in a piecemeal approach. The 3 things that we cannot compromise on the basic fundamentals of labor rights. That should be baked, and it should be a given, like we're in the 21st century. Secondly, uplift voices of impacted communities. Thirdly, embrace technology and use it to your advantage. And 5th, we need to be ahead of the curve and start forecasting what are the demand of the 72 billion jobs that Apurva said that looks like. What are the skills needed, and we need to invest in those now.
78, yeah. No, absolutely. I think also building on what Noreen said, I think, so, I'm going to refer back to some of the studies, that, some of the most recent report that we launched. So what we did there is we reviewed the existing base, and we looked at, 5 broad themes that summarize the key opportunities and challenges in promoting decent work. And as Noreen said, I resonate with that. I think there is no transition without prioritizing decent work. I mean, without that, we will not have, we will not have workers' well-being at the center of it. And if we don't bring along our people, then we cannot go anywhere, right? This is all about people at the end of it. So the first thing that we looked at, the first theme was labor market and sectorial transformation. Now, what we interestingly see is that in the literature, there's a lot of study that talks about what kind of jobs, how many jobs are going to be created, just as I'd mentioned earlier, some of the statistics. But what we find is that there are very few studies that focus on the quantity as well as the quality of jobs. What we also find is that, as I mentioned earlier, most of the research is focused in the global north. Where it is focused in the global south, most of the studies are focused on the waste management sector, which really shows that there is so much of, we really need to tap into how this is going to look like in sectors beyond waste management as well, right? Because this is only a small portion of what we're talking about. Another thing we found is informality and the circular economy was another theme that we investigated. And we really see that the informal sector is so key to this whole journey because they represent about 60% of our global workforce. In Bangladesh, the informal sector, according to the 2010 labor force survey, represents 87% of the workforce. So that's a huge part. I mean, when we are talking about so many of these initiatives, we're essentially referring to 13%. What about the remaining, huge part of the economy that's not part of the formal economy? And what we see is that, the informal economy is really also underrepresented in these studies. And there's also really scope to deepen that work. In terms of work reallocation and skill development, what we see is that we really need, we need workers to transition from linear to circular jobs, and this is really dependent on development of deep skills. So, it's really important that we tap into different networks here. Private sector players, vocational institutions, government, we need everyone to come together. And really, this needs to be a two-way process of input into the labor market and policy. In terms of working conditions and social protection, what we really see is, again, this is not really represented enough in literature. And we really need to develop measures to improve the working conditions, especially of the informal sector, right? Where we do see some research, this is mostly on occupational safety and health and waste management and recycling. However, other aspects of decent work like remuneration, inclusion, collective bargaining are mostly left unexplored. Finally, what we also looked at is gender discrimination and social equity. So what we see is that projections again say that in a circular transition, we will have more jobs for women, for female workers. However, if we do not manage the circular transition, the same blind spots that we have in the linear economy are essentially going to be propagated. So it is not enough that that the research is promising, but it's also really important that we manage this transition well by involving all the different stakeholders and players that are involved. So again, I will pause here and pass over.
No, thank you so much. I think one of the things that you mentioned, and I think, Noreen, we had a conversation about this, I think you had mentioned social dialogue as one of an essential element in designing some of these jobs, including these voices. I'm kind of curious what challenges you've sort of experienced when setting this up, when trying to see what these decent jobs could be, and if there are any solutions or approaches that you are using.
I was actually thinking of asking a question to you and Apurva, and thinking in my head is, just transition is not a new concept. It's actually came out of the labor movement. Its roots are embedded in social dialogue. I think one of the key things we've seen in kind of starting those conversations is the example I used earlier. Lack of evidence and accountability. We're all, terminology is divisive. We are defining things different ways. And I think the most important thing is creating those spaces for sustained dialogue. This is not something where we're going to have KPIs in 5 years. It's a long-term process. And I don't think the industry and the community always is willing to invest in that long-term marathon-like mentality that's required, because we're bringing in diverse actors who are not natural allies to create a joint roadmap. I think the idea is to have a common understanding, but in order to have a common understanding, it hinges on looking at the problem the same way and also agreeing on the terminology. I think building the awareness, socializing the concept, and most importantly, keep meeting the individuals where they're at. And I'll give you a specific example. We're trying to understand how can we bring actors, such as workers, as part of the climate movement, because in their head they're like, look, we just want to get paid, we want decent jobs, we want to get on with our lives. But if you tweak the kind of narrative, and Bangladesh itself is the 7th most climate vulnerable country, we're supporting a study with Cornell University which is going to show exactly how heat and rising temperature and rising water level is going to impact major production sites. And the numbers are quite scary. But however, to get the attention of worker-led organizations and entrepreneurs, it's like you have to break it down in numeric terms. Due to rising heat of 1 degree within your factory, you lose your productivity by X amount, which means you lose your salary by X amount. And Mr. Factory Owner, this is what it means to you. I think it's really important to not just talk in abstract concepts, the point Apurva made. Everyone knows the problems, and sometimes after a while you're like, okay, the ship has sailed, what can we do? What can the solutions look like, and what's needed to scale them and contextualize them? And I think with regards to the study that Circle Economy's done a while back, about 4 years ago, we also tried to do a similar one with BSR on bringing in the gender aspects and the dynamics that we need to be mindful as this new sphere of jobs are emerging, which begs another question. So it's great to see that the issue of informality of work is something that's front and center, and the impacted communities are the ones who don't necessarily have the agency. So that's important. But my question to the both of you is, where do circular jobs end and green jobs begin? Or are they part of the same gamut of things? Or is it something that we're missing? Or are we overcomplicating the process?
So I think that's a really tricky question, and I don't really have the answer for it. Where do circular jobs begin? But I think, the thing is, circular does not translate to good, right? So jobs that are good for the environment are not jobs that are good for workers necessarily. And I think that's a really, key point to make. So the circular economy is also not socially just by default. We need to design it and co-implement it in a manner in an integrated manner to achieve need satisfaction, well-being within planetary boundaries. And of course, social dialogue is very much a central part of that. And in fact, coming back to the point of informality, if we actually implement circular activities without deep interrogation, it can actually lead to further marginalization of workers, right? So there's an example from Tunisia that we see. So in Tunisia, the national government formalized the recovery and recycling of post-consumer packaging waste. And they created something called EcoLef, which is a state-run system operated by the National Waste Management Agency called ANGED, right? Now, although it is spoken about as a successful case, and it is in some aspects, what the strategy failed to acknowledge is that there were so many informal workers who were involved in the waste collection process, called barbichas. And these, about 8,000 barbichas, were not actually able to access the EcoLif collection spots directly. So they could only trade waste through an intermediary, which means that they made huge losses, and they were also not part of the formal protection system. So such a strategy, though might seem circular at first glance, has actually led to further marginalization of informal workers rather than inclusion in formal entrepreneurship. And so, these kind of strategies are the ones that we need to be mindful about. So when we really talk about embedding circularity, we need to think about also what could potentially be the detrimental impacts and, have a more holistic perspective.
And I guess just to add to that, I think a personal opinion would be, we're talking about new jobs. For me, it really is, we're talking about new jobs and what do future jobs look like. I think for a matter of accountability, I think for the longest time, circular economy or circularity has been the hot cake of policy of who's going to be accountable for it, who's responsible for it, what ministry, where does it fall into? And I think it becoming circular jobs, I think allows it to sort of categorize it in a certain way. But I honestly think it's a matter of semantics, and it's a circular job. It's a green job, it's a decent job. I think in a way those definitions are very intertwined. And I think that's how I would view it. I think it's kind of looking beyond that, and when you get to defining that, how do you contextualize it for your supply chain or to your community? And I think that's how I'd answer it. I think another question that I did have, I think there's a lot of projects, there's a lot of circular economy projects happening in Bangladesh right now. And one of the questions would be, they all have different focuses and different ways of implementing it, but not always looking at decent jobs or sort of a just transition as an element of that project. What would be your, whether it's advice or how can they address this aspect as part of what they're doing? Because essentially, they want to transition towards circular economy. They're building different infrastructures for it, be it recycling, be it a policy approach. How can they include a just sort of decent work as part of what they're doing?
I can go first. I think we've already, Apuba, you and I already touched upon it. Talk to the people. Talk to your workers, find out what does it look like, because there is going to be a knee-jerk reaction that what do these circular jobs mean? Does it mean that we're going to be out of jobs? There's going to be a natural resistance. What do just conditions look like? I mean, it all comes down to the basics, right? Decent wages, agency, and I think some of the work that our partners at GIZ are doing, creating the enabling ground for insurance, social insurance is a key important role here. As we've seen during the pandemic crisis, those who are the most vulnerable were plunged into further precarity due to the lack of social safety nets. And I think as part of this transition, be it to circular jobs, green jobs, whatever we want to call it, I think having those safety nets that buffer the shocks while this transition is taking place is absolutely essential. And I think the other thing is, this is actually an exciting time. We are, for once, seeing a race to the top with the EU Green Deal, the circularity directive in the EU. France is making its own mandate. The US has introduced the Inflation Reduction Act, which is going to create the demand for these newer jobs and newer transitions. Events such as this positions Bangladesh to actually be a leader in this space, start investing in the conversations, the spaces, and the skills. I think skills are really, really important, and this is where the private sector has an incremental role to play, and the international community can bring in that technical know-how, and then we unlock the opportunities for scalability, leveraging the research and the evidence that's been created by organizations such as Circle Economy.
Yeah, I think that was, that captured it very well. I think it's really about social safety nets, absolutely about upskilling, you know, understanding what we need to prepare for, making sure we have conversations. And, you know, just to touch upon this as well, so we've spoken earlier today, but a project that we're working on right now is called Switch to Circular Value Chains. And this is a project that we're running with UNIDO, Chatham House, and EIB, as well as Circle Economy. It's an EU-funded project. And you know, right now we're in a phase where we're really trying to understand what kind of capacities do we need. So as part of this project, we're working in Bangladesh with the textile industry, and we're focusing on post-industrial textile waste. And as you know, a part of our trip to Bangladesh this time has also been to meet with different suppliers and understand, you know, what kind of training gaps exist, how can we design something that is complementary to initiatives that are already there, because there's already so much work that is going on. And as part of this, what we also did is we visited a cluster of SMEs that are in the northern part of Bangladesh, and this was such an eye-opening experience for us. So this is a cluster that focuses on using post-industrial textile waste, and they basically recycle it completely, and they use that to make products that are 100% recycled, such as shawls, blankets, you know, household products. And it was so inspiring because what they do is they get the waste from Dhaka. This is mostly sweater waste. They unspin it. They convert it into bobbins, and then they send it back to Dhaka for recycling. If it is not possible to be recycled, they use that to make ropes. And this here existing was a community of really micro enterprises, mostly family-led businesses, you know, working with, you know, hand looms and power looms that are such an inspiring example of circularity that already exists. And so these are the kind of, you know, solutions that we also need to look at, because these are not high-tech solutions. These are low-tech solutions, and these are, you know, cases that we can really look at for inspiration. So as part of our work, what we're also really trying to do is, you know, shine the light more on these kind of examples and also see how we can support them, because what they need is probably not, you know, principles of circularity. They don't need to be taught what circularity is, because that's their bread and butter. But they probably need a different kind of support. So this is also just a general call to action that we're, you know, if anyone sees potential to collaborate on this project as well, we are here and welcome to exploring discussions as well.
Thanks so much. I think we're almost at time, and I think maybe a final question or a final note. We'll be back a year from now. Between now and next year, what are the things that we can start working on? We can start doing, and the conversations we can start having, who do we start having those conversations with? And how can we prepare?
Well, half the room has left. So but no, I think events such as this is laying the foundation for the conversations that we can have. But I think it's not just about, it's creating the spaces for conversation and also listening. I think that sometimes we get kind of embroiled in the urgency to deliver. I think taking the time to listen and designing things that celebrate the locally led adaptation or innovation is a space that we hope we're going to be building. I think it's what Apurva started with. Circularity is not new to our part of the world. We've had to learn how to do with a lot less, and we've been innovators in that space. And I think we can recapture that positioning, provided we keep an open mind. And I think in a year from now, I hope that we won't be having separate conversations on green jobs, circular jobs, linear jobs, and it's all part and parcel of surviving with dignity and climate-proofing jobs and businesses. So we'll have one event, a big mega event, that kind of brings in the actors and celebrate the solution providers that Apurva mentioned.
Yeah, so I think just to add to that as well, I think we're all part of the dialogue, right? So who do we speak to? We speak to all of us. It's policymakers, it's business owners, it's academia, it's all of us, right? And I think a year from now, hopefully what discussions we can be having is about showcasing some more examples of how we've really managed to successfully, push the boundary in terms of not framing circular economy as a concept that is rooted only in the ecological identity, but also really making it about the social agenda. And hopefully a year from now, we'll have many more inspiring cases from Bangladesh as well as the region to showcase, for that. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Requesting you to stand together for a group photograph. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will have a presentation explaining circularity, the journey is the destination. This segment will be conducted by Mr. Warner Lang, Coordinator of GIZ Textile Cluster Bangladesh, Deutsche Gesellschaft für International Zusammenarbeit, GIZ GmbH. Duration of the presentation will be 10 minutes.
Apologies if I pronounced your name wrong. No problem. But only 10 minutes if you are willing to listen another 10 minutes. The room is almost empty. Yeah. Thank you. The room is almost empty, and maybe I make it, and at the end of my presentation, the room is completely empty. So what is left? What has not been said during the day already? Frankly speaking, I'm afraid nothing is left. So what I can contribute is a different perspective from development cooperation. And during lunch, I was talking to the Swedish ambassador, and she said, we should connect the dots. Fortunately, I don't know whether it was intention or not, she was wearing a black dress with white polka dots. So it was a clear verbal and also visual statement, but I think that's exactly the challenge. And that's why I thought the journey is the destination. I think the what is clear, the question is more about the how. I said to the Swedish ambassador, I'm a bit afraid, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, telling the same, what people have heard throughout the entire day. And her response was, Werner, repetition is the mother of learning. So you will get now another lesson. Now I have to switch to my favorite slide, which is this one. And I can imagine that this probably also visualizes how your brain looked like after such a long day. But this was an effort with my team to identify options of cooperation from the German perspective. And so let me now try to, how should I say, to shift from that chaos to a more structural approach. We are talking about a lot about circularity. The current model, of course, is still linear. And frankly speaking, I ask myself, once we are talking about circularity, how far we are away from that. So linear means take, make, and waste, with the effect that natural resources are turned into products that ultimately are destined to become waste. Because it's also the way they have been designed. So turning to a circular economy, of course, is about avoiding waste and pollution by keeping products and material in use, which in my interpretation is a direct attack against the fast fashion model. So some people might be already frightened. To make a comparison, probably some of you remember Kodak and Agfa, who didn't make it because digital photography was simply killing them. Or if you look to retail, to retailers like mail order business with a big book and paper, or the dinosaurs of retail, department stores, online took over. So I think it's really crucial that this industry is aware about what is going on. And we heard about the necessity of investments, the necessity to be willing to invest. And for example, if you look at the industry of medical devices, investors, private equity completely has accepted a failure rate of 80 to 90%. And I'm asking myself whether the industry is really willing and visionary enough to accept that this turn from linear to circular might heavily affect their businesses. But as I said, the journey is the destination, so let's still try to connect the dots. That was the wrong picture, but I think this is underlining what I said. Important is, and I don't want to quote, you can read faster than I, that the Bangladesh government already committed to this concept, to this overarching goal, and this is, I think, important. We heard the additional secretary, Abdur Rahim Khan, that the government is willing to support this process. I think it also contains space for more formal employment. Michael was talking about the elephant in the room, the jute business. I think it has a huge potential to create formal employment, also further enhancement of formal economy, and making also the industries ready for export to global markets that require additional sustainability or circularity measures. This brings me to the European, where is it? No, one back. Yeah, brings me to the regulators in Europe. Not presenting every detail, but these keywords like eco-design, transparency, digital product passport, minimum criteria, and all types of environmental claims, or simply an extended responsibility of producers will force all participants along the value chain to join this journey. And I'm absolutely confident that regulators should not longer talk only about the what, it should also include the how. And if you look in detail to these new ideas of legislation, which politicians are already working on, it contains the potential to create more level playing field, and by that also creating space for business cases. Because I'm also absolutely convinced without having business cases, we will not make progress. Coming to, also coming to due diligence. The due diligence legislation is not only about working conditions, it's also inclines environmental compliance or environmental due diligence. So I'm really confident that the regulators will deliver the fertilizers to make progress. If we look to the value chain or the supply chain, then of course it reaches from energy and material input and finally ends up at waste or disposal, but at the very end, the leakage of material and energy. We have already lots of loops where we have good examples of recycling, remanufacturing, or reuse, or use longer. Again, the already mentioned attack against fast fashion, but we also have examples which are almost 20 years old. For if you look, oh, it's not working, what's going on? This little arrow in consumer markets. Maybe some of you know that 20 years ago, the German organization tried to introduce a standard coat hanger. The retailers and brands agreed on standardized hangers, and this allows that hangers not went any longer direct to dumping areas because they circulated many times, and after they were not in a proper condition anymore, they were recycled. And at the same time, there was an agreement along the supply chain with the manufacturers in manufacturing countries that whenever goods have been transported in a hanging and not in a flat pack condition, they used the same style of hanger and were so, in that way, delivering hangers to this circular model in the German retail business. So, according to me, the retail sector or the fashion industry, fashion retail is used already to such kind of models. And of course, the idea is now to extend it along the entire process chain. We talked about, of course, recycling of yarn. Parts of the fashion, the textile waste also goes to dumping areas. And this brings us to the next point, which is waste to energy. And waste to energy here in Bangladesh goes, of course, also beyond the textile industry. If we have in mind the dumping areas of big cities, mayors are getting more and more in trouble, are also contacting us, whether we as Development Corporation can offer solutions how to cope with this challenge. So if we now ask ourselves, where can Development Corporation contribute? We talked already about national regulations. We also have international regulation, which have to be somehow aligned. And now we thought where to contribute from Yeah, German development perspective. We are preparing government-to-government negotiations in October. I think the German government will support the journey, and German development cooperation in Bangladesh, we think should have three core elements which are addressing the industry directly when it comes to technology and processes. We think that also collecting, separating waste here in the country is relevant. So if you, for example, think about the end of another supply chain, electronics, electronic waste in this country is already a challenge. But also the question whether waste has the right consistency to be turned into energy, probably also there, cutting waste or textile waste can deliver a significant contribution. And last but not least, the promotion and the alignment of regulation, this linkage of national and international regulation, I think also offers potential where we as German Development Corporation have a chance to contribute. Yeah, I would say less is more. It needs a clear focus. It needs the willing ones. I think the willing ones have raised their hands already. And this is my personal experience after 7 years being here in Bangladesh. Once you have the right people around the table, and it's not necessary to have 100 or 200. Sometimes 10 people are enough. Then you can start things moving. And I'm absolutely confident that these 10 or 15 people have been in the room today. And I'm absolutely confident that this journey will reach its destination. The question is when, but I think we will experience that hopefully together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will have a summary note on today's conference and the discussions. The segment Summit, Key Takeaways and Next Steps will be delivered by Morten Lehmann, co-founder and CEO of Tailwind. Duration of the segment is 15 minutes.
I have good news for you. I won't spend 15 minutes. I just asked my colleague, should I do the long one, all of my notes, or should I do this one? She said, without a blink, do this one. So, but let me just spend a few words first on just thinking on what Mustafiz said early on in the day, how BAE has been at it already since 2018. So it's not a new concept. We've talked about circularity for many years around the world. I think what we are trying to achieve by this first inaugural event is really saying, how can we translate all the talk, all the language into the local realities on the ground. And for Bangladesh and the economy of Bangladesh, the businesses of Bangladesh to be in the driver's seat. So a lot of things are happening around the world on circularity, new economics. That's all important. And everybody in Bangladesh, they need to listen. But Bangladesh also needs to make it their own. What is circularity for the country of Bangladesh? Ambassador Riaz said it very clearly. When we talk about circularity, we talk about securing the economy of Bangladesh. He talked about securing the niche, and I think that becomes important for the countries to say, of all these things, that is circularity, this big monster that has been lauded as the biggest business opportunity the world has ever seen, but we just haven't seen it yet. It's a journey that it was just said. So it's not easy. I think what became very clear today and what I really liked about the attendance today is that we need all the stakeholders, right? Nobody, not even Lafarge can do this, not even Unilever can do this alone. We need all stakeholders. And of course, the reoccurring theme, we need policy, we need incentives. All that totally agree. I would also encourage everybody to not wait for that. I think the business, the economy is moving so fast that we just have to see what can we do while we wait for incentives. There are things we can do while we wait for the perfect, or maybe not perfect, but at least more incentives to move us in the right direction. I think Reverse Resources said it very clearly. The things you can start with, for example, separate black from white. There are certain things you can do already, and I would just say, start by these things, don't sit and wait. The economy is moving, your competitors are moving, both in terms of other manufacturers, other countries, so do get started, understand where you are today on circularity, and find your route, and find your collaborators, and start working together. I think a key discussion today also was here at the end also, and a big realization, and some of the myth busting that was done early on by Kim is like, circularity is not only environment, it's also jobs. And the fact that yes, we might create many jobs, but we might lose just as many. So for the world and for Bangladesh, this transition or transformation, as Ambassador Ria likes to call it, requires a lot of upskilling, a lot of discussions on how this skill will take place. And then I think maybe just in the end, of course, this is for the economy, but we also talked about cities and the country of Bangladesh, and it's also about making this city and the country a place that we would like to continue to live in. Because as it was said many times also by the new envoy for climate change is happening now. It's making the cities harder and harder to live in. It's making the factories harder and harder to work in, makes machinery break down, etc., which will cost, etc. So it's also to make sure that we have a great place to live in where we can run profitable businesses. And just finally, just a big shout out to the BAE team. It's amazing what they have done in a very short time. We launched this conference in March at the Sustainable Apparel Forum. And since then, it's just quite remarkable what they have done. And being here last night, seeing there was nothing here and seeing what they've built, I think just a big shout out to Mustafiz and his team. But also a shout out to what will happen over the next couple of years, because we know this is just one first step in terms of circular economy in Bangladesh. We will be working on this over the many years to come. So first thing to do, sign up for the conference that's happening a year from now, but very closely and much more important, look for what will happen until next year at the same place we'll be here. Lots of initiatives will be launched. We know that it's not done by the talking up here. We need action, and the BAE team, together with Sandra and me and all the other players in here, are here to help you. So thanks a lot for those of you who chose to stick around. It's been a pleasure to learning from all of you today. Big hearts out to all of you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to wrap up today's conference. I'm taking this opportunity to thank our partners in collaboration with Lotus Foundation, in partnership with P4G, and powered by Deutsche Gesellschaft für International Zusammenarbeit GIZ GmbH, Embassy of the Netherlands in Bangladesh, and H&M Group. Your valued support has made this initiative possible. We're also offering our heartfelt gratitude to our contributors, Embassy of Bangladesh to the Netherlands, Delegation of the European Union to Bangladesh, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, Reverse Resources, Circle Economy, Holland Circular Hotspot, Lafarge Holcim Bangladesh Limited, Asian Development Bank, PDS Limited, NBU, Unilever Bangladesh Limited, BRAC University, and Jahangirnagar University. We share our heartfelt gratitude to all our speakers, experts, delegates, and other participants. Thank you all for cooperation, and thank you all for taking time out from your busy schedule and being here with us today. Wishing you all a good luck, and once again see you on our second edition on June 12th and 13th of 2024. Thank you very much once again.